Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today, and I'm bringing you another weekly Dragon Ball Super discussion, and this time, me and Geekdom 101 will be talking about something we saw in episode 65 in Dragon Ball Super in regards to Zamasu's godly strength. So without wasting any more time, Geekdom and I are going to talk about some of his attacks, whether or not he's probably the most unique villain in terms of attack powers, and more of the whole holy themed-esque type of moves that he was using. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So Geekdom, what did you think about the whole holy godlike techniques he was using?
I liked it a lot, man. I thought it was very unique, very creative for the character, and I thought it was also very fitting for this character. The character of Zamasu has always been very righteous in a negative way. He's always been very arrogant. He's always been very, in a way, prejudiced, towards mortals. In the past, we've compared Lord Frieza to Hitler. He's kind of been space Hitler with his, genocidal kind of tendencies, but with Zamasu, we're seeing even more of those kind of genocidal tendencies. Except that it appears like Zamasu is much more of a much worse, much higher scale. Not to mention that his techniques and his look and his attitude and his motivations are all just legitimately totally just from ripped out of Final Fantasy. I made the comparisons in my Super review. If you play any of the old Final Fantasy games, the villains all want these very strange goals. Because traditionally in fiction, villains want to rule the world and they want power and things like that. But the villains in Final Fantasy tend to, and not all of them, but the majority of them tend to want to destroy the world or create a world of consciousness where only they exist. Sounds to me like that would be kind of boring, but that's what they want. They want to destroy everything but themselves and be the only thing that exists in the world. Which again, bro, what a boring world it would be without girls. So, but they don't, right? But they don't care. So it's one of those things where this character of Zamasu now, Merge Zamasu, has he has that ring behind him, the holy ring that Arceus has.
The halo,
Pokemon.
as they say.
The halo, yeah. He's got the spears of judgment, which I love the wacky names, bro. It literally comes off like a Final Fantasy VII final boss. And really no other villain that we've seen in the past could possibly have things that are in this vein. Frieza is just a space tyrant. King Piccolo is just, we didn't know he was a Namekian, but he's a demon. And then Majin Buu is like an actual demon, With Zamasu, he's a twisted god. And there is a difference between a demon and a twisted god. And you notice in Japanese fiction versus Western fiction, we see a lot more of these twisted god archetypes. I mentioned Final Fantasy and other RPGs, and the reason for that is because in the Western world, in the European and American, North American, South American kind of fiction, we tend to stay away from twisted gods because it's controversial, right? You don't want to ever talk about a god. You don't want to use the word God in a negative connotation because of all the different religions. And, the Western world is definitely a lot more sensitive, which is why I'm confident that if Dragon Ball Super were to get dubbed 15 years ago, the amount of censorship wouldn't even, they're not even going to call this guy a god. You know what I mean? It would be beyond anything. But the point I'm trying to make is he's a very unique villain. His attacks reflect, I think, his arrogant godliness, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, bro, because when I first saw this episode, when he was using, the moves, Blades of Judgment and, Lightning of Absolution, I thought here, I'm like, this is something that clearly wouldn't, appeal if it was purely just subjugating itself to Western audiences. Obviously, a Western audience wouldn't probably use those terms because it seems so godlike. And I think to some degree, it actually makes, Zamasu a very cool villain because it's like he's punishing people, as you said before, Geekdom, and obviously it's showing a lot of his arrogance. And I think that it kind of changes the way that we look at him, because we've been brought up in Dragon Ball to look at the Supreme Kais as these good guys, but it's kind of well, what if one of these guys who's supposed to protect you kind of turns and becomes, a bad apple? And it kind of reminds me, when, obviously if you go back to Star Wars and, a lot of other fiction, how you have that concept where if you believe that what you're doing is justice, then what you actually do is not always good. You know, and for those of you who might not know what I'm talking about, this is referring to what Gowasu said several episodes ago when he was pretty much talking to Zamasu, and he's like, don't let your views of judgment actually blind you. And the reason being is because if I think punishing people is right, and that's what I'm doing is good, then what I'm doing is actually not good, because I'm actually punishing people and causing a lot of harm, but I actually think I'm a good guy. And when you blind yourself as a good guy when you're in fact a villain, that's one of the coolest things you can do with a plot, a plot twist. But to talk more so about Zamasu here, Geekdom, one thing that really piqued my interest is, how did he just get to know these moves? And before you explain, your thoughts, the reason I thought of this is because Zamasu, in essence, kind of fused with himself. Like Zamasu is a guy who is obviously Goku Black. So the thing that I found interesting is, where did he get the knowledge to use all of these moves if the only other object he would have fused with was himself? What were some of your thoughts?
I think he just made them up as he went along, dude. If you want me to be honest, like everybody else in Dragon Ball, you just make them up as you go along.
Yeah, because the thing is that I kind of felt as if was like his halo like actually affecting the way he was using his techniques, because it seemed to me, Geekdom, and I don't want to put too much headcanon into this, but it seemed to me like the halo to some degree kind of had control over what he was, kind of like the symbiote and like Spider-Man, like Venom, like it's like that was like affecting the way he was making decisions. Because I mean it just doesn't make any sense to me how he would have learned all those techniques. But ultimately, man, like I think like it's really cool to see how Zamasu has been shown as a villain in the series. And in the comment section below, guys, share your thoughts on your theories on how he really learned like all of these godlike techniques. Do you think it was the halo? Do you think it was him? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. So before we close this out, Geekdom, I wanted to get your thoughts in general. Now that we've pretty much surpassed GT in terms of, obviously episodes, do you think Zamasu is the most unique villain in the entire history of Dragon Ball? And what I mean by unique is I'm not just talking about power, I'm not just talking about the fact that he's a god. I'm saying in terms of his pure origin story compared to all villains from Tao Pai Pai or Mercenary Tao to Cell to GT. Does he have the coolest story?
I think it's gonna be, we don't know yet, I think it's one of the coolest. I actually think that Baby, and here come the GT's non-canon brigade. I don't give a fuck. I think Baby has an incredible backstory and a legitimate beef with Goku and the gang. So he might edge out Zamasu slightly. Because I feel like Zamasu's turn to the dark side, honestly, came a little bit too sudden. In other words, he saw Goku once, fought with him once, thought about it for a bit, and then finally turned. I just feel like Baby had many more years to let that anger, and hatred quell and build up and build up. I feel like with Zamasu, had he been given more time to become more and more angry, like I think it was a little bit rushed, honestly. In fact, this arc is now coming off a bit more rushed, so which I don't like, but it's just Dragon Ball Super's like that. And I think, no, actually, I think as far as that goes, I think that Baby might edge him out, dude. And again, I don't give a shit about canon. I know there is no canon, folks. There's no canon. I don't care what you say. There's never been an official canon. Don't argue. There's no canon. Toei and Toriyama have never come out and said there's a canon. The safest thing you can say that is canon is the original manga. We're talking about just quality of villains, including movie villains and just any villain in Dragon Ball. Any villain, right? Including movie villain. I think that he's up there. Also, I feel like Toa is, again, another, it's not canon. Another character that's not Toriyama. Well, she was created by Toriyama, but her story's not written by Toriyama. I think she's another villain who, she's mad because Dabura was defeated by by Majin Buu, killed, and she wants to break open the seal of the demon realm. Like, I think that's another great villain as well, very underrated villain. So I think Baby edges him out for now. I think Zamasu just needed a little bit more build up.
All right, well, with that said, I guess I'll kind of have to confirm. I do think that Baby is definitely one of the best story concepts for a villain. Maybe the whole Baby story may not have been as executed to, other sagas that we've seen in Dragon Ball series, but I definitely think it's really up there. So, With everything said, guys, I hope you guys like this video where we're kind of talking about both Zamasu and his godlike powers. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always said, have a great day, guys. And I really appreciate Geekdom for coming out today for once again another weekly super discussion. And I will post the link to his channel in my description. So have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day.